Hi guys, welcome back to LTF1. Today we're going to be talking about a topic we hope doesn't come true, but something that isn't looking too good. However, something that is looking a little bit better is this channel. We've been going for just about a year now. In that time, we've covered maybe 90% of the races with a race preview and a weekend in review. We've had these types of videos, we've had personnel profiles, we've had conversations with people in the paddock, and now we've even got our own project car. So the channel seems to be going well. Subscriber count, maybe not so much, but hopefully a few of you that click this video will click the subscribe button. With that out of the way, we can get on with it. So, number one, it's Constructors. F1 is a Constructors sport. While all the prestige is with the Drivers' Trophy, the cash is with the Constructors' Trophy. And it's what all the big bosses back at the big companies want to win. F1 only has 3 constructors right now. We've got 10 teams and only 3 constructors: Ferrari, Mercedes, and Alpine. Maybe you can count Red Bull now that they've taken the engine over from Honda, but rumors are they're going to be partnering with someone else pretty soon anyways. So 10 teams, 30% constructors, not great. We need big names coming into the sport. This year with Honda pulling out, it's getting even worse. With Honda pulling out, we see another major car manufacturer stepping away from motorsports. With the way the world's going, with the way cars are going, the ban on petrol cars, you have to wonder at what point will constructors start to leave F1, the ones that we still have. We've seen the mass exodus from FE as soon as they found out that that wasn't going to be long-term beneficial or even just short-term beneficial for their marketing and research and development. How long are constructors going to stick around in F1? Yes, they've signed the contracts, but we all know they can drop out at the tip of a hat. We need to attract big manufacturers and we need to ask ourselves why we're not doing that. Number 2, the engine formula. Now, we've had some talk about this recently. We've had the sustainable fuels thing come out, but the engine formula needs to be applicable to F1. In 2014, when we switched to the hybrid era, it was completely applicable to where road cars were going in 10 years' time. We were 10 years ahead, well, we weren't 10 years ahead of the curve, but the thinking was that we'd be ahead of the curve. Car manufacturers can come to F1, test out their technologies, get it right, and then put it in the road cars. Well, petrol cars are going to be banned soon. Formula E is already up and running, so we can't go the electric route, and I don't think any of us want to go the electric route either. So where do we go from here? Well, we need to find an engine formula that can attract the big man. The sustainable fuels thing does actually factor into this, because that is probably the next big thing in internal combustion engines. In ICE engines, that's the next big thing. Sustainable fuels, most likely. Unless we can suddenly build an engine that doesn't put any carbon emissions out and is great for the environment, but that's probably not going to happen. So until then, how do we make our current engines work with sustainable fuels? That would be something that manufacturers are looking into, because then they can tap into the petrol and diesel infrastructure that we've already got set up around the world. They don't have to invest in the electric infrastructure. But with this ban on petrol cars coming, 2030 I think it is in the UK, in Europe, in most countries, it'll be around then, 2030, 2025 in some countries. F1 really needs to think about where we're going to play it, where it's going to play its part on the world stage with the big manufacturers in 15 years time. Number 3. Now this sort of counteracts every other point I've made so far. We need to attract big manufacturers, we need to get on the world stage, but we also need to look after our privateers. We've just seen Williams fall to the financial regulations, and yes, the budget cap has come in, but it's still not cheap, and with a 200 million buy-in, a privateer team would still be thinking twice about whether they want to come into F1 or not. And F1 doesn't need privateer teams, it can just run with the big manufacturers, with VW Group, those cars coming in, with Mercedes, with, I was about to say McLaren, who are kind of on the edge. They want to be a big car manufacturer, but they're still a privateer team. F1 can run with just the manufacturers, but it's privateer teams that we want to see. We want to see the young scrappy teams coming up and going up against the multinationals. It's a story that's as old as F1. Not so applicable today with the intensity of the technology, with the intensity of the race, in terms of the race for new technologies, the race for that extra 10th coming off your lap time. But it's still just that much better to see the Williams doing well compared to maybe a Ferrari doing well. Both have had rotten luck in the past couple of years, but when the Williams comes through, it's just a little bit something more, because you know that that's a family team, was a family team, and you know that just a little bit more heart, a little bit more soul has gone into that. Number 4, you'd think this would be higher up the list, but the racing. Now, I know what you might be thinking. The racing is amazing. 2020, 2021, we've had great seasons. We've had seasons that have made everything else look boring, but that's just my point. We've had seasons that have made everything else look boring. We had to go through the boring seasons first. And by no means am I saying the seasons were write-offs. They were still enjoyable to watch, but for different reasons. Racing is difficult. Drivers are struggling to follow, and we do have a big regulation change coming up. And if F1 get it right, in 2022, we're going to see the most competitive field we ever have. Cars are going to be going side by side through every corner, including those at Monza. Monza? Of course they're going side by side there. Including those at Monaco. But what if they don't get it right? What if the F1 regulations come in and we still have one team a second and a half out in front? Exaggerated, obviously, but that is a possibility. Right now we're having these great seasons because we're at the end of a set of regulations. Everybody's got to the same answer different ways. The same answer doesn't look the same on all the cars, but the lap time is there, and the stopwatch never lies. Everyone's got to the same time, and that's why we've got a competitive field. That's why we're seeing the likes of Lando Norris pull the results out of his arse, let's be honest, and go up there and fight with Hamilton, fight with Verstappen, Perez and Bottas. That's why even Russell in his Williams, when the rain comes down, can put on a show for us. And that's something that we may not get with the regulation change. We may reset ourselves back to 2014, and I hope we don't. I am confident in the fact that Ross Brawn and the team have done as good a job as they can in getting the cars to all come closer together. And of course, with the regulations changing the aerodynamic surfaces of the car but not the engine, it gives us that much more hope. The engines are staying the same, so at least that is going to be a constant. But I'm really hoping that with the increased racing, these privateer teams can maybe take a few more results, take a few more headlines and bolster themselves, because right now, if you look at all of our privateer teams, other than McLaren, everyone's sort of struggling. And not struggling in a massive way where they might, well, other than Haas actually, that they might fold come the next race weekend, but nobody's in a comfortable position either. It doesn't seem like anyways. So number 5, my last point. If you've stuck with this video long enough, then I guess you're agreeing with what I'm saying, so maybe you'll agree with this too. Number 5 is the fans. F1 is a global sport, nobody's denying that. It's a multinational championship. We go to races all around the world, but I don't think anybody's going to argue that we have the footprint of some of the other larger sports out there. And it might be wishful thinking of me, but I believe we should. And there are a few reasons for this. There are a few reasons why we don't have the footprint that other sports have, and one of those things is race promotion. Hosting a race weekend and hosting these cars, the paddocks, the teams, all the costs that come with the F1 circus is astronomically high. There are only a few tracks around the world that can cope with that, and then to make their money back, they have to charge us, I'm gonna say ridiculous because it feels ridiculous fees to go and watch the action. Now, I use ridiculous loosely because they have to cover their costs. They don't really have that much of a choice, and they need to make a profit as well. Otherwise, there's no point doing it. So yes, they kind of have to charge us these fees, but at the same time, someone like me, Ish and Raj, we've got this channel. We're not making money out of it. I'm pretty sure you can tell that. We don't have the cash to be going to race weekends left, right, and centre. Really, going to Silverstone once was a treat, and probably the last time for a long time that we'll do that. And that's a shame because we're fans, we're probably the core fans, and we're not getting to go and enjoy the sport that we make all this content for. It doesn't quite make sense. And that race promotion thing brings us on to another topic, and that's we have pay drivers. We also have pay circuits, if you see what I'm saying. F1 has to follow the money. We go to questionable countries, questionable cities, questionable regimes, just because we need a race and we need the money that that race will bring in. Places like Baku and Saudi and Qatar, all these tracks that have ties to organizations that have terrible human rights records, etc., etc. Places that really, if we question ourselves, if we step back, should we be going there? Should we be promoting their country? No, we shouldn't. I think everybody knows that. There's an argument to say that you put a little bit of good in the country. There's progress, F1 makes progress, but it's a very loose argument. You can't prove it either way. And what tends to happen is when we follow the money, we get boring races. Now, Baku is an exception probably, but if you look at the other pace circuits, they're pretty naff. They're the ones that you might fall asleep on, and you'd be forgiven for falling asleep on. So we go back to ticket prices then. And you think if ticket prices were like that of a decent football game, 50 quid, and you get to see most of the action. Imagine how much we could do, and imagine how many more fans we could attract to the circuit. A place like India. F1 used to go to India, it wasn't financially viable. They couldn't sell the ticket prices at the high prices that they needed to be at because people are poorer there. And so we stopped going. The government backed out, the committee that was running the track sort of collapsed, and we never went back. There's still a very strong fan base, and if you're looking for a fan base, then F1 India, we'll have the link, but basically just have a look at that. But they're a very strong fan base in India. There's 1 billion people there. Tap into that, and F1's going places. We could have 2-3 races in India. It's a massive continent. It's not a continent, I'm an idiot, it's a country, but it's a massive part of the Asian bloc. And the fact that F1 isn't even trying, by the looks of it, to tap into this baffles me. Add to that the fact that most of the races are now behind a paywall in most countries. How do we expect new people to engage? Fine, we've got the Drive to Survive series, it's on Netflix, you have to pay for that. There's no, or at least it doesn't seem like there's any free way to get into the sport. And that's a shame. I got into the sport in a free way, I guess, when things were going on Channel 4. I think the British Grand Prix and the Monaco Grand Prix were both broadcast on Channel 4 for free, and then the highlights would come of every other race afterwards in the evening. That's how I started watching, but not everyone is gonna chance their way in like that, and that's a shame. Obviously, this is a debate that's going on so much more widely. It's not just F1, it's football, it's cricket, it's everything. It's Sky that are buying everything up and sticking everything behind a paywall. So it doesn't seem like there's much F1 can do for that, but there is some hope. Rumours that Netflix are going to look for the broadcasting rights soon enough. That would be amazing because Netflix is so much cheaper than Sky. I think even if you just wanted to watch F1, you'd still end up paying around £35-40 a month just to watch F1, which is a bit ridiculous. So there you go. I've been waffling for 10 minutes now about reasons that I think F1 may be doomed in the near future. Now, I don't want F1 to be doomed in the near future, but these are just some problems that I can see as a fan that aren't being addressed. Comment below, what do you think? What do you think of my 5 reasons? Do you think I've missed anything out? Let us know, Jules. I'm sure you'll leave a comment. These videos are really for you. We'll start the discussion in the comments. We'll see you there. In the meanwhile, like this video, share it, subscribe, hit the notification bell. Visit our Patreon if you wanna contribute and get us some better stuff going with the project car. But yeah, until then, from our new set, it's all from us. It's not actually a new set. I'm just at an Airbnb. Looks nice there, doesn't it? Wish we could have a set like this. Felt like I waffled a lot for that video.